The setting of GTA 5, Los Santos, based on Los Angeles, a city probably most associated with the film industry, will take on even greater significance after this episode. It turns out that the developers sometimes completely let themselves loose. In many GTA 5 missions, the creators went all in, and their concepts are pure Hollywood fantasy, and that's exactly what we'll talk about today. What's really hard to explain is the stuff that goes down in the mission Friend Request for Lester, the one where we trick kill Jay Norris. Lester wants Michael to plant a mini bomb into a prototype in the Life Invader building. For that, he tells him to change into an outfit that fits the style of a programmer, and then pretend to be an employee in order to get inside and figure out what's what. So Michael shows up in front of the building, lights up a smoke, and just hopes for a miracle of God that someone will come, mistake him for an employee, and let him in. Michael only had to wait a few seconds for this miracle, with maybe a 0.5% chance. And bam! Some dude shows up, starts talking to him, and just goes on about whatever random stuff comes to his head. Obviously, there's no need to say that this Ricky guy doesn't realize at all that Michael doesn't have the slightest clue about what he's babbling about. What's more, fortune favors Mike to the point that it turns out he looks a lot like some local tech guy. And since Ricky had trouble with some porn he was watching at work that gave his computer a virus, he decides to ask Michael for help. At first, you'd expect that since Ricky mistook Mike for some IT guy, it would be something serious, a super hard task requiring years of education, industry knowledge, expertise, that sort of thing. Nothing further from the truth. Ricky just asks Michael to remove a virus from his computer. Bravo, Rockstar. Then later, we can even pick Ricky as a crew member for the heists to handle the technical stuff. Sorry, but Ricky's CV isn't exactly impressive. His professional achievements are watching porn and finding some sucker to close a couple of windows on his computer and run an antivirus so it doesn't come out that he's watching titties at work. And then there's Michael's line when picking crew members. Yo, this Ricky guy, maybe he's not that good, but he's enthusiastic. Well, great, that's exactly how you should pick guys for a crew that's supposed to steal a few $1 million in diamonds and shiny stuff from a jeweler. Back to the mission with boobs. With Ricky and the prototype. Ricky, by some cosmic coincidence, also casually mentions to Mike exactly where the prototype is, which was crucial because all Lester told Mike was that it was somewhere in the Life Invader office. Whether it was in a bathroom cabinet, a microwave, or up Jay Norris's ass, that he couldn't know. And of course, the final outcome of the mission was that the little battery Michael planted had a bomb in it, which later blew up in Norris's face, killing him. Michael found out about this only while it was happening, during the live conference. And yet in response to Ricky earlier, he had thrown out a joke he had no right to come up with since he had no idea what was coming.
Hey, have you seen the prototype in the demo room? When Norris announces it at the keynote, minds are gonna blow.
Yes, they are.
So Michael goes into this room Ricky pointed him to and gets some divine enlightenment. Why? Because, man, the roof was stuffed with all kinds of hardware, on shelves, on the desk, everywhere. And Mike was such a specialist that he might as well have mistaken the prototype for his daughter Tracy's dildo. And then there's the whole battery installing action, the flawless way Mike planted it, the bomb's tech from Lester, and the fact that Mike somehow knew exactly which piece of gear in the room was the prototype. All that leaves a ton of question marks. But okay, let's not nitpick too hard. Maybe with some stretch that could be explained away. In the end, it's worth pointing out that after installing the surprise into the prototype, Michael left his backpack in the room, just to give the authorities another clue about who tampered with Norris's equipment. As if cameras and eyewitnesses weren't already enough proof to throw Mike into prison for years. The mission Complications fits today's video like a glove. Franklin has to sneak into Michael's house and sees the car rented by his son. Since he was late with the payments, Franklin grabs the ride and heads back towards the dealership. And suddenly, the action falls apart because about halfway down the road, from under some sheets on the back seat, a grown man pops out with a gun in hand. First of all, how the hell does Franklin not notice Michael sitting on the back seat while getting into the car? The only explanation here would be an invisibility cloak. But ladies and gentlemen, that theory quickly collapses. Wrong universe. But that's only half the absurdity, because the second part is, what was Michael even doing hiding under those rags in the back seat with a loaded gun in his hand? Did he just move in there or what? In general, it's really hard to explain. Sure, you could say Michael spotted Franklin snooping around the house and figured he wanted to steal the car, and since he was a fan of classic Vinewood movies, he wanted to catch the thief red-handed in proper movie style. But come on, Michael owned an entire damn mansion, filled no doubt with valuable stuff. What made him think Franklin was after the car specifically? A car that wasn't even all that prestigious, and which Franklin, from outside the house, had no way of even knowing existed. And yeah, if as players we approach the garage doors during this mission, Franklin does try to open them. So if Mikey had caught him doing that, then sure, it would make sense that he assumed Franklin was after the car. And great, all fine and good. If not for the fact that this entire sequence is completely optional. On top of that, a similar thing happens with the main door of the villa, which makes Franklin's target practically impossible to figure out. So yeah, it made for a solid show, especially with what Mikey later made Frank do. But logically speaking, there's no rhyme or reason to it. And then at the end of the mission, of course, Michael wanted to teach Simeon a lesson. Smash not only his face, but also his car dealership. But driving into the building like some psycho? That's a bit much. It also feels like kinda far-fetched that nobody noticed and called the cops saying some maniac just played kamikaze. And of course, this wasn't a one-off stunt from the developers, because in other missions, there's also quite the circus going on. This time, it's about the mission Chop, in which Lamar asks Franklin to help in kidnapping one of the OG Ballers guys, namely D, for whom he planned to demand $40,000 ransom. While the guys already had D located, he suddenly took off on his little motorbike. And the first absurdity is, how the hell were the boys able to keep up with a bike like that, driving in some average van? I mean, sure, Franklin is a beast behind the wheel, but if you put Alonzo in some old hoopty and some half-blind granny in a Koenigsegg Agera, even a master like him wouldn't stand a chance against that grandma. Moving on, the chase eventually shifts to a rail yard where D shakes off Franklin and Chop thanks to a passing train. And in the end, after several long minutes of Chop's painstaking sniffing, Franklin manages to track down the fugitive in one of the train cars. And my question is, why didn't D, during those long minutes, just decide to keep running? In that time, while Franklin and Chop were searching the area, he could have been easily back on Grove Street already, chilling with his homies and sipping a cold beer. The whole scene where Chop had to ride the lady friend already took so much time that the window of opportunity for D to make moves was enormous. And before Franklin even reached the car where D was hiding, he had searched through 5 other cars nearby. Did D really not hear Franklin checking the wagons one by one, knowing that sooner or later he'd get to his? Why didn't he bolt then? This guy behaves as if he wanted to get kidnapped, playing around with Frank and giving him handicap at every step. And that's still not the end, because eventually the guys do manage to catch D, except Lamar, for some unknown reason, decided to pull off his mask. Let's be real, Lamar doesn't exactly look like Einstein, but come on, there's a limit. Then Lamar, like a true master of chessboard maneuvers, just like Garry Kasparov himself, makes another brilliant move. Lamar drove up in a van with license plates that had his name and the initial of his last name on them. I didn't even know how to comment on that. Naturally, that all didn't go without consequences either, because D immediately recognized Lamar. So if the kidnapping had succeeded, Lamar would have been in serious trouble anyway, since the Ballers would want revenge. Still, the kidnapping did not succeed, and that was for a different reason that, of course, also puts Lamar in the running for Idiot of the Year. Sorry, Lamar, you're a cool dude, but in this episode, it's gonna be real hard to defend you. Anyway, Lamar decided to call the Ballers from his own cell phone, which, as Franklin rightly pointed out, meant the police, and probably the Ballers themselves too, would now have no problem tracing Lamar's phone.
We got your boy.
You calling them on a cell phone, you dumb motherfucker? They gonna trace this shit in a second.
We want 40,000. Is pay me or pay the funeral director, motherfucker.
What the f you done? You just gave them our location. Now we gotta let this motherfucker out of here.
And if that wasn't enough, Franklin had already warned Lamar during the chase not to call the Ballers from his phone, because they trace him.
If we snatching this dude, we snatching his ass right. Remember the homies around the block?
Man, the homies is lame.
Yeah, so we not. Cops on their cell phone soon as they made the ransom call. Triangulated the signal, ghetto birds all over the place.
But no, ladies and gentlemen, it looks like we gotta change perspective. It's not Lamar's fault, it's the developer's fault, who wanted a Hollywood-style action sequence too badly. and they tangled it up so much that we ended up with something that can hardly be explained and had no business existing. How do you explain this? That the boys just never grew out of kindergarten? That Franklin says, "Yo, don't call from your phone or they'll trace us," and Lamar goes, "La la la, screw you," and calls them anyway, just to prove to Franklin that he won't listen to him, because why not? And another thing, before Lamar even made the call, he openly announced he was going to do it, and in one of the alternate dialogues, he even states the purpose.
I'm gonna make some bills off this fool. Just shut up while I make the call.
Meanwhile, Franklin, who just a moment earlier was super sensitive about that possibility, now totally ignores it and lets Lamar go ahead with the call. Only after Lamar screws things up with that phone does Franklin snap back to reality and say Lamar blew the operation and they need to release D, hyperforced sequence. And then another issue. Franklin threw Lamar's phone out of the vehicle and ordered D to be released so that they wouldn't get caught. Except that the police wouldn't have traced Lamar's phone in a flash, would they? And it's not like they'd teleport instantly to the spot. Frank and Lamar still had some time. They could have pulled out the SIM, tossed it, and driven off somewhere remote to figure out another solution. But okay, here at least it kind of makes sense, because since Lamar called from his own number, the cops would know it was him who kidnapped D. So yeah, safer to just back out and, if anything, pretend the whole thing was just a prank. Still, all the rest of it remains really hard to explain. There are many more missions in GTA 5 where Rockstar went overboard. So if the video was solid, let me know in the comments and I'll make another one. Thanks for today. Thanks for the support. Take care and see you next time. Goodbye.